What's good, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of Upon Further Review, all part of the Irish Breakdown podcast family. And it is IB After Dark. It is a Monday night. We are ready and raring to go with Upon Further Review. We've dove into the film as much as you can in a 52-3 win. And, I will say these are the fun films to watch because you know that there is going to be a lot of good to watch and pull from it. But then, of course, there's always some bad and some things that we need to talk about for sure. Again, Notre Dame is sitting at 8-1 right now. Resounding victory over a down Florida State team, obviously, but a 49-point win against a Power 4 team. And all the other stats that you put out there on Twitter on Saturday night, Sunday morning, were fantastic. I mentioned a lot of them on the show and then retweeted a bunch of them as well. I mean, just some really great nuggets out there and just a lot of fun to watch that game. I'm sorry. Sometimes blowouts are boring, not when you're blowing out Florida State. So I was a big fan of that one, Brian.
You know, we'll have a lot to say about this victory, Vince, and obviously I wasn't on the post-game show yesterday, so I'll certainly have a lot to say. But like the reality is this is Notre Dame made a statement this weekend, and that's going to be what a lot of my breakdown of the game is about. Is they're making a statement, and they've been doing it for a while, and I think a lot of us are kind of slowly starting to figure that out. And when you actually look at the numbers, it's unreal, Vince. I mean, you've literally you're 7 in a row. You've now won 7 in a row, and longest streak of Marcus Freeman's young tenure. You have won these games by an average margin of victory of 34 points, 33.9. Your average margin of the average score of the last 7 games is 44-10. Notre Dame has scored over 50 points twice. They have scored 49 or more points 3 times in this stretch. I'm sorry, 4 times. Let me rephrase. They've scored over 50 points 3 times in this stretch because I forgot about the 66 against Purdue. They've scored over 50 in each of their last 2 games. They've scored 49 or more 4 times in the 7-game stretch, and they have handed every single team that they have played during the 7-game win streak their worst loss of the season. And 4 of the 7 have been by at least 2 touchdowns. 5 of the 7 are by double digits, and one of the 2, or excuse me, are by. Let me rephrase. 4 of them are by two touchdowns more than what the next closest loss is, and the only reason that one of them is not is because Georgia Tech scored late in that game to make that not a double digit difference between the next closest team. And a lot of times the next closest loss is the one right after Notre Dame in a lot of instances. Yeah. So you look at what they're doing, Vince, and it is absolutely dominant football. And the thing that hit me this weekend is they haven't peaked yet, Vince. And that'll be some of what I talk about today is they haven't peaked yet. This is a team that is still ascending. And I'm going to have a lot to say about that, and how it ties into the Florida State game here once we get rocking and rolling.
Yeah, before we do, we got to talk about our friends over at MyBookie, Brian. And, it's a great friendship that we've got cooked up with MyBookie, and they're willing to help you out as well, friends of Irish Breakdown. And so if you're part of IB Nation and you want to get onto MyBookie, now's the time to do it. And all you have to do is use promo code IRISH, and you're in. They will 100% deposit bonus. So they're going to double whatever money you put in the first round, and you're ready to rock and roll with whatever bet that you make. And then once you continue to win, and when you continue to use MyBookie, you can jump into their loyalty rewards program, which is MyBookie Plus. And so they're going to help you out all along the way. I believe they've got MyBookie's risk-free Thursdays. And so you get to make some risk-free bets there as well. So, I mean, it takes all the guesswork out of it and all the risk as well. So make sure you jump over to MyBookie, use promo code IRISH to double your bankroll with a 100% deposit bonus. Bet anytime, anything from anywhere with MyBookie, the sports book that gives you control and will rewards you for every moment of play. So, Brian, this is your first opportunity.
Just a heads up to people.
Okay.
We're going to break this game down, but we may have an additional topic to discuss later in the show.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Keep that in mind. And we're going to do something a little bit different this week, and something that we're probably going to do moving forward for the next 3 weeks that we do upon
if the games go the way they should. But we'll
fair.
Let's play it by ear. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah,
Let's dive into this. Let's dive into this first segment. I'm excited about it.
Look, I'm confident. So we're gonna let this is Brian's first opportunity to kind of talk about the game with all of you. I mean, obviously it was a couple of days ago now, but hasn't been on a show yet. He didn't grace us with his presence on the post game show because he was doing his thing over at Notre Dame Stadium and wrapping everything up and got some writing out. But this is the first opportunity on a podcast form. And so I'm going to give Brian the floor and just kind of let you talk about the game and anything that you can go anywhere you want with this one, Brian. So your thoughts on the Florida State game?
I'm going to say this, Vince, because it was a really fascinating a mental sort of working through the game on Saturday, because I'm watching the game and I'm thinking they're really rusty. That was the first thing that I know. Both sides of the ball, rusty. They came out of the break rusty, not as sharp. Yeah, it wasn't that Riley Leonard reverted back to what he was in September. It wasn't that at all. It just his timing wasn't what it was kind of coming into the bye. And the offensive line played okay, but not great. The defense was good, but it wasn't like lights out like you normally think, where you're just watching and you're like, wow, they're playing great football right now. It was none of those things. And they won by 49. And something hit me like, yeah, of course, like we're football coaches. So it's like some people get mad, like, oh, you guys always talk about they got to get better. Guys, we're football coaches. The name of the show is Irish Breakdown. If you want someone to just tell you, hey, they're all pretty and they're wonderful and there's nothing to get better, you might not want to watch a show called Irish Breakdown. There's always going to be the things to get better at. And and I promise you talk to Notre Dame coaches, they're going to point to a lot of things that they got to get better at. So we'll get into some of that when we get into the keys to victory. I want to talk more big picture, Vince, about this victory and what it meant for me. Because, of course, there's a lot of things they can get better at. And that's the thing I said earlier. This team has not peaked yet, Vince. I mean, you just look at the numbers of what they've done in recent games. Say, well, and I was really pissed when I read a comment from Mark Schlabach at ESPN today, because he had this yesterday, it was this really flippant comment about Notre Dame's victory. He says something like, Notre Dame did to Florida State. Actually, I put it in an article that I wrote because I just had to respond to it. Like, it just was so petty. I was like, okay, I got to respond to this because I'm going to meet your pettiness with my own pettiness, but I'm actually going to do what you don't do, which is I'm actually going to bring facts into my argument, not just, give some homer take about, Notre Dame because you don't like Notre Dame or you want to hype up SEC teams, whatever. He said, I strongly considered because he had Notre Dame in his playoff rankings last week and then dropped them out this week. I strongly considered SMU and Notre Dame over Georgia for the 11th spot. The Irish steamrolled Florida State on Saturday, just like everyone else has done this season. Bull crap.
No.
Let me give you some data, Vince. I'm a numbers guy. I like data. I like facts. Okay, so 2 biggest blowouts that Florida State had coming into this game were what? It was a 26-point loss to SMU and a 22-point loss to Miami. Vince, you're a teacher. What's 26 versus 22?
Versus
what is 26 plus 22? What is 26 plus 22?
Yeah, 48.
48. Yeah. So that was against SMU, a top 15 team, and Miami, a top 15 team. 48 points. What's 52 minus 3?
49.
49. So Notre Dame beat Florida State by more than the 2 next biggest blowouts combined in this game. So don't talk to me about how they did what everybody else has done to Florida State. Well, everybody kills Purdue. Nobody's killed Purdue like Notre Dame killed Purdue. Matter of fact, Notre Dame outgained Purdue by more than what Ohio State and Oregon did combined. Notre Dame had more rushing yards against Purdue than Ohio State and Oregon did combined. Nobody did to Florida State what Notre Dame did. Nobody came even close to doing against Florida State what Notre Dame did. So everybody does that. Bullcrap. That's why it was important for me to point out that their last 7 wins, people say, well, they haven't played a very good schedule. Okay, they played a ranked team. They've played 2 teams that were ranked when they played. I think 4 of their 7 opponents have a winning record, I believe, right? So it's Louisville has a winning record during that stretch. Miami has a winning record. That was during that stretch. Georgia Tech, who just beat the number 4 team in the country 2 weeks after Notre Dame beat the crap out of them down in Atlanta. And then also Navy, all have winning records. So 4 of the 7 opponents that Notre Dame has beaten, winning records. 4 of the 7 opponents during a stretch in which Notre Dame has outscored their opponents 44-10 have winning records in November. Like at this point late in the season. Not when they played, now. Okay? And also, each of those 7 teams, Notre Dame gave them their worst beatdown of the season by far. By far. So, no, they didn't just do what everybody else did. They dominated way more than what SMU and what Miami did. And here's the crazy thing, Vince. They didn't play that great. They played well. You don't beat a team 52-3 and play poorly.
Right.
But they were sloppy. They're very sloppy. Dropped passes.
Yeah.
Quarterback having easy misses on balls he shouldn't be missing. I mean, the throw to Jaden Greathouse is over his head. That should have been an easy touchdown. I mean, he's wide open. He smoked the guy.
Right.
You know, and then he hits a huge 2 big plays, that one to Jeremiah Love, one to Jordan Faison, that both get dropped. That would have been potentially big plays. You know, like there's some missed tackles, bad run fits from the linebackers. You know, just there were a lot of things you look at and you're like, you got to get better there, you got to get better. And they won by 49, Vince. And it wasn't a fluky 49. It was a dominant 49. A dominant 49. And so when you look at the point, the outgained Florida State by 245 yards, and Florida State got a decent chunk of that on their first and last drives of the game. You know, so you look at those things and you say, yeah, you guys are not even remotely close to being accurate. Okay, here's another thing. Okay, Notre Dame did not hold Florida State to their lowest yardage total of the season. That was actually North Carolina, who held Notre Dame who held Florida State to their lowest yardage total. In this game, Florida State in the game had 208 yards. North Carolina held them to 201. Notre Dame held them to 3.01 yards per play. The next lowest yards per play was 3.91 against Clemson, almost a full yard better. Miami gave up 4.1. The last time that they had a game where they had a lower yards per play average was all the way back in 2019 against Miami in that game as well. So no, Notre Dame did not do to Florida State what everybody else did. And the crazy thing is, this was not like the Purdue game. It was kind of like a couple plays here and there, but like Notre Dame played about as well as they could have played in that game, right? Like, I don't know that they could have probably hung another touchdown or so on them maybe, but like, yeah, it was pretty good. If they would have played well against Florida State, like, really, like the way they did the last couple games coming into this game, especially against Navy, they'd have hung 70 on them and would have had to try hard not to hang 70 on. And I'm not being hyperbolic, Vince, at all. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the fast start and all those other things. When you have, and so what hit me was this, and this is what I'm going to say. Notre Dame clearly still has a lot to prove to show that they're a championship team, right? Mm-hmm. We understand that.
Agreed.
But what hit me this weekend, and what hit me as I was breaking down it, like kind of that realization led me down this rabbit hole that led to all that data that I was putting out. Because it just kind of hit me. I started looking at it like, good Lord, like they're actually doing this. It was Notre Dame has become what we always hoped they would become, which is they just kind of go out there and just destroy people. If you're inferior to us, we're not going to beat you. We're going to hammer you. And even when we play poorly, like the Miami, Ohio game, we're still going to beat you by 25 points. That Miami team has won 5 out of 4 since that Notre Dame game. They were 0-3 after that Notre Dame game. They're now 5-4. And I believe, Vince, let me just look this part up real quick. Well, I don't even want to get into that just yet. But I realized in this game, like, they have become a dominant team. And what I mean dominant team, there's a difference between a dominant team and a championship team. A championship team obviously is one that can go out and win a championship. A dominant team is one that they're just so much better than everybody else that it just gets to the point where they don't have to play well to whoop teams. And I've kind of viewed Notre Dame as playing a bit of a B- game against Florida State. That's my grade, which is about what I felt they played against Florida State in 2021 and needed overtime to beat Florida State. When they played sort of a C plus B- game against Toledo in 2021, they needed some Jack Cohn heroics at the end of the game to win that game. Same thing when they went on the road to play Virginia Tech that season, right? And what I'm realizing now, Vince, is their C plus B- game wins games by multiple touchdowns against quality opponents and obliterates bad opponents. That's where Notre Dame is. And why? Well, they're a relatively well-coached football team. Number one, there's some areas they got to get better. The other thing, too, Vince, is what you're seeing is this is an incredibly talented football team. And they've done all this despite the fact that by the third game of the season, Vince, they lost their left tackle, their center, their best blocking tight end, their starting Viper, their number 2 Viper, who was their best pass rusher, and their All-American cornerback. All gone by game 6. And they've done all this with all that off the roster. Why? Because this is a very, very talented football team. An incredibly talented football team, Vince, and a dominant team because they did not have it early, but they have it now. They have that mindset of, we're going to come out here and we're going to destroy you because we're going to play Notre Dame football. And that's what we saw Saturday night, Vince. It wasn't about Florida State because they were sloppy, a little sloppy. They were rusty, but you know what they also were, Vince? They played hard. They were focused on beating that football team, even though the execution wasn't always there. You know what I mean? And so we've seen in the past where the execution being not there usually went along with the focus, the effort, the passion wasn't there. Those things used to go kind of hand in hand for Notre Dame. It didn't on Saturday night. The sloppiness was just, okay, they just off. It was a little windy, whatever, no excuses. You come off of a bye week. I mean, I understand why. It's not okay. You want to correct those things. There's a lot of missed opportunities in the game. But you look and say, but they still played hard. They were still locked in on going out there and dominating, and they absolutely dominated, Vince. Dominated. And I've heard some people say, well, you know, you padded the stats. So in the last 7 games, they've scored 66, 28, 31, 49. In the last 4 games, 49, 31, 51, and 52 points. Like, that's impressive. And they have only given up more than 14 points once in that stretch. They've actually only given up more than 14 points twice all year. So this is a really dominant football team, Vince, that the scary thing, the crazy thing is, dude, they haven't peaked yet. And what we also saw, and I give credit to this, a friend of mine, my friend Jeff actually said this when he goes, you know what? We also realized on Saturday, we've set a new baseline for Riley Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
Riley Leonard played this version of Riley Leonard. This is about as bad as he's going to play. You know what I mean, Vince? Missing some reads. He wasn't taking his first read. It was there a couple times. He was off targeting some throws. But you know what else he was? And here's the point I made to my buddy. And then he came back with that great point. I said, you know, the Riley Leonard from earlier in the season would have had some of those inaccuracy issues, but he would not have made the plays that Riley made with his arm. So we had to see Riley miss some throws he shouldn't have made. But you know what he also did? He made some big-time throws. The 4th down throw to Jordan Faison, do you know why Riley wouldn't have completed that earlier in the year? Because Marcus Freeman would have no way, shape, form, or fashion allowed him to throw the ball on 4th and 10. They would have kicked the field goal or punted or something like that. No way he was going to let that version of Riley Leonard do that. And
the best part about that, it was against 12 guys, by the way.
Exactly. But
12 guys that were playing.
I'm going to talk about that move by Marcus Freeman that's showing his growth as a game day coach.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that in the post game.
That was so
100%.
Good.
Not till the end because we forgot about it, and then somebody brought it up in a super chat, and we went for like 20 minutes talking about it.
It was. There's a confidence level there in the offense now that is why he's making those calls. There's a confidence with how. I mean, Riley was not like aiming balls; he just was off. And quarterbacks are going to have that sometimes. They're just going to have an off night. But the back shoulder throw to Great House, the back shoulder throw to Jaden Harrison, the 4th down throw to Jordan Faison, the throw to Jordan Faison that he dropped earlier on that drive, which was like rolling left, flipping his hips, getting it. This is a tad low, but you got to catch that ball, man. The ball he threw to Mitchell Evans, I still think that was a catch. Yes, the ball hit the ground. He never lost possession, in my opinion. But the point is, he put that ball where only Mitchell Evans had a chance to catch that football.
That's 100% true.
Right? Like, so whether it was caught or not, again, I thought Mitchell caught it. I'm not going to like lose my mind over it because I understand why somebody may thought he didn't, whatever the case may be. But the point is, Riley put that ball where only Mitchell could have done it. The fade throw for the touchdown, gorgeous ball. So like when you watch it, like that's the baseline for what we are. And I made a comment, Vince, this team, and I asked a buddy, I said, this team reminds me a lot of, and he was like, Michigan last year. I said, no, it doesn't. Because I think this team is a lot better offensively right now than Michigan last year. They remind me of 2016 USC. And he goes, explain. I said, do you remember how bad USC was beginning 2016? Notre Dame wasn't that bad. They didn't start off 1-3. They didn't lose Bama by 50. I said, but what sparked that team was a change at quarterback. And by the end of the year, you couldn't look back in September and say, well, they were that team. Notre Dame technically didn't make a change at quarterback, but they made a change at quarterback. The Riley Leonard we've seen from Louisville to now is a significantly better quarterback than the one that we saw even against Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. But because you take away that fourth quarter drive, which was a great drive, but you take that away, Riley didn't do a whole lot throwing the football that game. If we'd have seen just Saturday's version of Riley Leonard throwing the ball against A&M, Vince, that game's not close. That game is not even close to being close. It's a 14, 17-point game. And so that's kind of how I look at it and say, this is what we thought we were getting in Riley Leonard. So even though Notre Dame didn't technically make a quarterback change like USC in 2016, they kind of did.
Well, Riley's talked about that, though, Brian. He's talked about the fact that he kind of flipped a switch in his head, and he's like, I can't play like this under this kind of pressure that he was putting on himself.
Right.
You know what I mean? And in his words, he put it in God's hands, and he just went out there and played football.
Right.
You could
and that's what we're seeing.
You could see the difference.
And did you see the part where him and Denbrock were barking at each other? Did you see it on the broadcast?
Yep. Somebody got mad that they said he was walking away from him or whatever. Like, no, he wasn't
football, man. That's football.
Exactly. Like, slow down.
But I like that. I like that Denbrock was going at him in a blowout. Yeah. There's a level of expectation I want from you.
Correct.
And I like that Riley's barking back, because the one criticism I've heard from people with Riley is he's a bit of a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. No, sir. And what that tells me is Riley's starting to get a little bit confident in this thing. Like, Coach, I got it, man. Like, I got this.
Right.
And those are all good things. So even though they didn't make a change, it's like they did make a change. And the reality is, I could spend an hour of this show doing coaching points of all the things that need to get better from this game. But the reality is, Vince, they still went out and destroyed Florida State 52-3 and missed a field goal in that period of time as well. And had some missed drop balls that took away other potential scoring drives.
Yeah.
And so that's when I look at it and I say, and the reason I point to USC, because nobody wanted to play USC late in 2023 or late in 2016. Now, does Notre Dame still have a lot to prove these next 3 weeks? Of course, because you could go lose to Army or Virginia or USC, and it's all kind of out the window. But I can only evaluate what they are now. I can't predict the future. I can't tell you what they're going to be the next 3 weeks. I can only tell you what they are now. And what they are now is one of the most dominant teams in the country for now more than a month. Vince, their quote-unquote sloppy game in the last month was a game where a team that just beat the number 4 team in the country had to get a late garbage touchdown with less than a minute left to make it an 18-point game at their place. That's their bad game of the last month. Think about that. And we've now seen how good Louisville is. Now people are starting to realize, hey, this Louisville football team, they lost to Notre Dame by a touchdown. They lost to SMU by a touchdown. They lost to Miami by a touchdown. They just smacked Clemson around a couple weeks ago. And Notre Dame controlled that. They led for over 52 minutes of that game. Miami didn't lead that long. SMU didn't lead that long. Notre Dame never trailed after the first quarter. They never were tied. Once Notre Dame went up 14-7, which was midway through the first quarter, it wasn't even tied. They were tied with Miami and Florida and SMU in the fourth quarter, Louisville was, of both of those games. Nobody beat Louisville as convincingly as Notre Dame did. And as far as like the way the game played out, And so you look at it, you're like, it starts to kind of, the puzzle starts getting put together, Vince, and you realize like, wow, this team is really good, because only really good teams can play their C plus B minus game and absolutely annihilate a Power 4 team. Now, is Florida State bad? They're bad. And I actually got the points. I nailed the points, Vince. I predicted 49-6. It was 52-3. So you flip a field goal. Right. And because I just was like, but when in my head, it was they're going to come out and stomp this team and play great, start fast, and just annihilate them. And that's how they'd get to 49-6. They didn't play nearly as good as I thought they could and should have, and got the same amount of points in this game. And they actually overshot what I predicted them to score and held Florida State to less than I predicted Florida State to score. Think about that. That's the sign of a really good football team. Now, moving forward, and we'll talk about this tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and I'm sure you guys will talk about it in your show, and you'll talk about the countdown to kickoff is, okay, you're playing a better team this weekend in Virginia. So you got to clean up some of these things. You got to clean up this thing. You got a little bit better here. You can't make those mistakes there because this is a better football team. You know what I mean? And so that was what was kind of exciting, Vince, about this whole thing was you look at it and you're like, dude, this is a really good football team. You know, and the article that I wrote was, you can continue to obsess over the Northern Illinois game if you want. And that game does not go away because of the way they're playing now, which is why they're not ranked number 1 or number 2. Because if they hadn't lost that game, they're at worst number 2 team in the country right now. At worst.
Correct. Yep.
And I'd still say you could argue Oregon should still be number 1, because even though Notre Dame has better wins at 2 and 3, their number 1 win is definitely better than Notre Dame's number 1 win. And they have some decent, 2 and 3 wins and things like that. They've beaten some quality teams this year. But it wouldn't matter, because as long as Notre Dame's 1 or 2, they're going to be 5 in that scenario.
Exactly.
The Northern Illinois game is impacting them and should impact them, which is why they're not 2 and why they're outside the top 5. But the reality is, this team this is not that team.
Right.
Now, the national media won't give them the credit for that. They ignore what Notre Dame is doing right now with that lazy comment from Mark Schlabach. Everybody else did this at Florida State. No, they didn't. No. Well, everybody kills Purdue. No, they didn't. Literally no one in the history of Purdue football has ever beaten Purdue as bad as what Notre Dame beat them this year. Ever.
Correct. That was historic.
100 years of football.
Literally historic.
Ever. So you realize, and it didn't hit me at first, Vince, because I'm watching. I'm like, because I'm a coach, man. I watch. You're with me. You're beside me. How many games you and I sat beside? You and I used to sit beside each other at games when we weren't even working together.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And and you know how I watch. I watch games as a coach. I don't watch games as a fan when I'm there. And it's like my wife will get annoyed because if I'm covering a game from home, if I got somebody else, go like Trevor's going to cover the Army game, so I'll be watching it from home. And she wants to celebrate stuff. I'm like, babe, I'm working. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, okay, fine, I'll give you a high five, whatever. But I'm working. You know what I mean? So I'm always having that critical view of it. But as you take a step back and you think about it, you're just like, wow, you know what I just watched? I just watched this is what it's like being an Ohio State fan. This is what it was like being an Alabama fan, where you'd watch Alabama play and they'd win by 40. Nick Saban's pissed in the press conference afterwards. Why? Because it's like, well, because we can play better and we should play better. That's the standard. And you could even kind of see it in Marcus Freeman a little bit today in his press conference, Vince, where he wasn't down on the team. He's like, yeah, it was a good win. We got to do a better job here. And, you could just kind of sense that he's like, yeah, okay, this is kind of what I expect this team to be now. And we got to get better and better and better and better. And, that was like, wow. Now, are they a championship team yet? Nope. They got a lot to prove to get there. They got to beat the Ohio States. They got to beat the Oregons. They got to beat the Georgias and the Bamas to become a championship team. But what I can confidently say right now, this is one of the most dominant teams in the country. And I believe that Notre Dame has, I believe they have the largest margin of victory of any team in college football right now. And here's another stat for you, Vince. Marcus Freeman in the last 2 years has gone 18-4. 16 of those 18 wins were by double digits. The 2 that weren't were both over top 20 teams. Duke last year on the road, Louisville at home this year. And they led almost the entire game of both of those games. Like, you start to put all that stuff together, and you're like, yeah, the Northern Illinois game sucked. And you can't allow that stuff to happen. But what you're seeing is Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman is starting to turn that corner. Right. Because you can't get to the beat Ohio State, beat Georgia, beat Bama until you get to here. You know what I mean? And now they're getting to here to the point where, like, okay, now it's that next step. Now go do this. And that was my takeaway from this game, watching what Notre Dame did to Florida State. Yes, they're not a good football team, but they did what elite football teams do to a team like that, because Miami's not an elite team. That's why Miami only beat them by 22 and needed by the way, Miami needed 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns to get to 36. That elite Miami offense. They needed 2 fourth-quarter, including a trick play in the fourth quarter, to get to that point, Vince. Notre Dame was just like, yeah, we're just going to kind of, be a little sloppy, but we're just so much better than you.
Right.
Our backup running back is going to rip off a 65-yard run to stop us, because it really doesn't matter who we put in a running back. We're going to rip off big plays. That's the statement that Notre Dame made. Yeah, we lost our All-American defensive tackle. You guys probably shouldn't have done that, because all you did was piss Riley Mills off. You know what I mean? Like, he literally made a sack on the next 2 plays after Howard Cross got hurt. Like, they just pissed him off. And he's dominated. He was playing okay, but he wasn't really crushing it. It's like that game, that pissed him off. And then just boom, dominance. And when the starters came out, Vince, Florida State had 44 passing yards.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And
they doubled it on the next couple of drives against the twos.
Yes.
Doubled it.
They had 44 yards passing when the starters came out.
Doubled it.
Yes. That is the mark of a team that has reached a level where the standard is now the standard. And what I mean by that is the standard is always what you say it is and what you hold yourselves to. But now the standard, the performance is the standard, is what I'm saying by that, which is we're playing at such a level, looking at it from the Notre Dame standpoint. I'll say they, because I don't want to make it, because I hate when people do that. But they are playing at a level to now where it's like they expect to go out there and play a certain way, knowing what the result will be. And we saw that. We saw that in this game. We saw a dominant defense continue to dominate. We saw a big play offense continue to be a big play offense. Now there's some things we're going to have to improve upon, and we're going to talk about that next. But I really needed to get that out, Vince, because what we are seeing right now, and my friend was like, well, does this remind you of 2017? And I said, it does from an outcome standpoint, Vince. And I want to get your thoughts on this. I said, you look at the 2017 stretch where you beat BC 49-20. You beat Michigan State 38-18. It wasn't that close. Beat Miami of Ohio 52-17. You beat North Carolina with your backup quarterback 33-10. Beat a top 12 USC team 49-14, beat NC State 35-14, then beat Wake Forest 48-37 before it all kind of fell apart. He said, don't you think it's kind of like that? I said, no, it's not. 2 reasons. Number 1, this defense is way better. And number 2, when I watched that team play, I said, this is as good as they can play. They are playing their best football. They can't be better than what they are right now. The scary thing that could potentially be scary for their future opponents is they are not playing their best football.
Yeah.
My friend, he goes, do you think they've played an A game yet? I said, I think Navy was close to that. I think Navy was an A game, especially offensively. But I think Navy was as close, A- at least. But it wasn't that, oh my gosh, everything's hitting. Like, wow, that we just saw this team at their best. They haven't done that yet, Vince. And I would argue that they haven't even played beyond their B-plus game outside of a couple times. There's been times with A side of the ball, and I mean, the defense has had a lot of A games this year, you know what I mean? But like as a team, offense, defense, special teams, and we definitely didn't see that on Saturday. I thought they played a B- game and won by 49. This is a really talented football team. Now it's about keep building, right? Keep building, because it could all be like that 17 team. It all came crashing down in South Florida in November. But this team is way better defensively than that. This Riley Leonard is a far better passer than what Brandon Wimbush was. And I love Brandon, but he just is.
Yeah.
And this team is coached better. They don't get blown out in big games like they used to, and like their current boss does, or like their former boss still does. I should say, still does.
Yeah. Well, Brian, that's good stuff right there. And there's so many times I wanted to interject and just, kind of compound on what you were saying, but that was your moment, and I wanted to
You
give
just
it
hit me
to
with the
you.
Animal House stuff. Just let them
Yeah,
roll. Just
just
let
let
you
him
know.
go. He's just,
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Just let him go. Just let him go.
He's on
Yeah.
a roll. Yes, fantastic. Great reference there. So yeah, no, good stuff. Everything you said is spot on. It was fantastic. And even with this is the only thing that I'll add to this particular part of the show. Even though the offense was sputtering at the beginning, never had an inkling that the game was ever going to be in doubt, because I never thought that Florida State, with the way that, even though that what they did on their first drive, right? I never thought that they were going to sniff the end zone, and they didn't.
Vince, I said they emptied the clip on that first drive, and all they got was a field goal.
Correct.
I mean, they emptied the clip, emptied the mag, whatever. They emptied it all, and they came away with a field goal.
Exactly.
Like, you're done. The only question was, is it going to be 27-3, or is it going to be 52-3? That was the only question about how the offense was playing.
Yeah,
that was it.
But the outcome, win-loss, was never in doubt. Never in doubt. It just never was.
And you can just feel in the stadium, Vince. I mean, it just was like, they're fine. They're sloppy, a little rusty. It's all good. They'll figure it out. That's not how we felt about this. I mean, you and I were sitting by each other at the Miami of Ohio game, Vince. It's not how we felt that game. When it was 14-3, you're like, God, they better make a play here. It could get weird, especially the Northern Illinois game. We obviously felt that way. But I'm sitting there 7-3 in the end of the second quarter. I'm just like, okay, yeah, they're sloppy. But I was annoyed by the way they were playing offensively, but there was never a concern of like, could this be Stanford all over again? Because again, this Florida State team is better than that Stanford team from 2022. I never felt that way.
Yeah.
And, and then they just, of course, once Jadarian broke that big run, you're like, all right, I'm gonna go get some nachos. You know what I mean? It just, you know what I'm saying? It was like, it was over. All right, let's just see what the difference is going to be. Yep. That's really what it was.
Absolutely. All right, we got a lot more coming right at you, so stick around. But in the meantime, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards right down there at the bottom, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Yes, sir.
We didn't do this at the beginning, and I am so upset with myself. But I want to thank all of you that have served our country and have made the sacrifice and have chosen a life that a lot of people like me don't have the courage to do, so that we can stand here and do things like this. So all of you out there, and I know we have a lot of veterans in our show, and I am sorry that that's not what we led with. I was so fired up about this game, I completely forgot.
We led with it on the last show, and so I didn't even think about it because it was kind of rolled in one on the other.
But you guys are we like to lift up celebrities and famous people, and that's who we get to, endorse candidates and do all this stuff. And it's a battle to see which person whose opinion I care the least about we're lifting up to vote for. But the true heroes in our country are those who choose to serve, because it is a choice. And we had a foreign exchange student from Germany when I was a kid, and they had to serve. When you were a male, you had to, at 18, you had to spend time in some capacity. In our country, it is a wholly volunteer army. And to all of you, I tip my cap. I offer my thanks, and just know that you are appreciated and loved, even though maybe we don't always say it as much as we can. But I do want to wish a happy Veterans Day to all of you out there in this community, because I've learned over the years how many we have, Vince, active and no longer active. Our guy Garen Knutson is currently serving. He's out there. We're thinking about him, but then also all those who are no longer serving as well. So all of our veterans, we appreciate you. We thank you. It's because of people like you defending this bad boy right here, right, that we're able to have the freedoms we have to sit here and enjoy this type of thing and talk about Notre Dame football. So thank you.
No doubt. Yep. I thanked Sean earlier today, since he's a veteran, and my brother's a veteran, and so there's veterans all over the place, and you could not have said it better yourself. I don't have the courage to do that. You know what I mean? I put myself in harm's way with teenagers. I am not willing to do what you guys do, and so I am eternally grateful for what you guys do and allowing us to do this, and allowing me to be able to sleep at night, and my kids to be able to sleep at night without any fear whatsoever. And so I am in your debt forever, and I appreciate it very, very much. So, all right. So here we go, everybody. Let's go move on to the next part of our show. Nice smooth segue there. We are going to revisit the offensive keys to victory that were discussed earlier in the week. And this is one of the things that we like to do. And so we're going to do offensive keys first. Then we're going to hit our defensive keys as well. And then we've got kind of a fun segment and then maybe another segment. You know what? We might just go all night. I'm not sure. So this is going to be great. We got all kinds of good stuff coming for you guys. So
you're the one that said it. We could go all night. So now you challenge accepted.
I've opened up Pandora's box. Here we go.
Challenge accepted. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this.
Oh, man. All right, let's jump into those offensive keys to victory, Brian. And, well, frankly, we're going to start out with one that probably isn't going to get a lot of praise, and that is start fast on offense. And at one point during the game on Saturday, you texted me. You're like, well, it's going to be a minus right off the bat.
And it is. It was definitely a minus.
Yeah, not a good start.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, it just was one of those things, Vince, where it was just frustrating kind of watching them early because it wasn't that they weren't playing hard.
Sure.
Like I said, I think they played hard from start to finish. They were just sloppy. It was just, Riley missing first drive was good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I love the
5
third
plays,
down
75
call.
yards.
Yeah, third down call was great. Hitting Aeneas, he read it perfectly, got the ball out. Aeneas, did what he did. The O-line, you could tell right away, wasn't necessarily, really going to move Florida State a whole lot. Pass pro was okay, solid for the most part, not great, not bad. But after that first drive, it was just sloppy. Drop passes. It wasn't anything that Florida State necessarily did. It just was drop passes, not making the right reads. Guys are open and not seeing them, and just some of that. What I could be wrong, but I attribute it to kind of just coming out of the bye. Just you were hot, just shaking off the rust a little bit, and it was a night game. You hadn't played one of those in a while. It was windy. All those different excuses you could come up with, and you had been off the field for a while. Sure. After that, I mean, you went on that first opening drive and you didn't get the ball back for 7 minutes of game time. It was much more than that in real time. And, you come out in 1st and 10 on the second drive. Jeremiah Love drops a pass. Riley misses a read on third down. He throws the ball high against Mitchell. You come out the second drive. You go -1 on a rush play. You throw a little swing pass. It goes for -2. Riley misses a read on third down again. All of a sudden you're punting. And then Jadarian Price is like, hold on, fellas. I got this. You know what I mean? And that sequence, too, was something that I really was excited about, Vince, because what happened on that sequence was, again, is indicative of why this is such a good football team. So on the 2-yard run, Jadarian's 2-yard run, I believe that was the run where no, hold on. Was it the previous drive?
So you're talking about
it was the previous drive. It was the -1 yard carry by Jeremiah Love the drive before. Okay. Anthony Knapp gets hurt.
Right.
Tosh Baker comes in, and on the first play of the second drive, Tosh drives a guy off the ball, and Jadarian Price cuts right behind him for a 17-yard gain, which kind of sparked the offense, and they had a 2-yard gain. That was the end of the first quarter. Then Anthony came in. Yep. His first play, him and Billy Schrouth have a great double team. Bo Collins, who didn't do a whole lot in the pass game, had a couple catches, wasn't overly targeted.
Right.
But Bo comes down and has a huge block on the safety, and Jadarian just follows those blocks, and then he does his thing. And like in the past, a lot of Jadarian's runs were like, that dude's a freak. Look at the great move he made. On that particular run, he had to make a guy miss the line, kind of. But it was the whole way. He just kind of don't let that guy squeeze on you. And he stayed right on that track, and then he outruns the defense. So it wasn't like the Florida State, the A&M run where he had to make a guy miss in the second level. It wasn't like the Purdue run where he had to make a guy lose in the first level. It just was like, this is how it's supposed to be. And, just like, so Knapp goes down. Tosh comes in, does his job, and then Knapp comes back, and it's just like and opens up a hole for the number 2 running back, so to speak. Although I still say 1A, 1B, but I'm making a point. And you're just like, that's why they're blowing this team out, even though they're sloppy, because everybody's out competing, everybody's doing their job. And when they do their job right, things like that happen.
Right.
And it was like that on Riley's touchdown. Pat Coogan, the first touchdown, Pat Coogan, is there. Nobody comes. So what does Pat do? Pat immediately takes off to that middle linebacker, smacks him, and Riley cuts right outside of him. And Pat was like, I'm not sure who to block. What am I supposed to do? Then Riley might get tackled by that linebacker. But Pat, I got nobody blocked. Nobody's coming to A-gaps. I'm going to you, buddy. Bring it on. And he did it aggressively, pops the guy, and he lets Riley do his thing. And so the O-line as a whole didn't block well, Vince. But when they did, you saw things like that. So, that allowed them to, and then they had a missed field goal. You had 2 3-and-outs. It was a sloppy first half.
Oh, yeah.
You should have had 21 points by your third drive. Let's be honest. Let's just be real about this. You should have had 21 points no later than your fourth drive. But by your fourth drive, you only had 14 points.
Correct.
So, no, they get a minus. I mean, they did what they needed to do to get to play their role in a big win. That late second quarter drive was huge. If you go into halftime up 14-3 or 17-3, it's not in doubt, but it's just going to be a sloppy win.
Yep.
Florida, that we were talking about wins. What's the moment that Florida State quits? It was that plus then Notre Dame coming out the second half and just quickly.
Then they were just rolling
off
at that
and then,
point.
Yeah. And then it was over. Get was it what drive was it that Clark had the pick? Was it? Yeah, his first drive. Jordan Clark makes the pick. Notre Dame's offense goes and puts it in the end zone. Ball game. Like they ran a screen on 3rd and 11, and Jaden Greathouse turned it into a first down. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, yeah, it's ball game. But they had kind of already started the quitting process.
Oh,
and it was because of that final drive of the second quarter.
Right. And the way the game kind of played out, Notre Dame did go up 14-3, obviously on that big price drive, but then the next, I realize we're talking offense right now, but game flow situation for me, I want to bring up. They go down, they score the big run, and then the next series is when Howard Cross goes down and Mills gets those 2 sacks in a row, and they force a crappy punt as well. And it's like, okay, yes, they're only up 14-3, but this defense is eaten. They're headhunting at this point, and there's nothing that Florida State's going to be able to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No.
So at that point, I was like, okay, let's see how this thing goes at this point. But yes, the offense started way too slow. And after scoring the 14 points, it was like, okay, all right, let's see what the offense does now. And it got kind of iffy there for the next few drives.
Yeah.
Until the final drive of the half, and then they roll at that point. You know what I mean? And the defense just kept eating the whole time. You know what I mean? So
it was a lot of the same thing. Riley just wasn't reading the defense as well as he had been in previous. It's like the 3rd and 3 on the drive after Jadarian's. They run a motion, and they're basically running 2 option routes and slides, and he just locked it on the left side. Once the motion happened, he should have looked right side. That's where the read should have taken him, and if he would have, Bo Collins is a guy within 5 yards of him. Right. It's just stuff like that. That's all correctable. That's just every quarterback has that day. Everyone. And he had his, but he still made the plays he needed to make. But it just was stuff like that kept, a missed block here, a drop there. It was everybody contributed to just an overall sloppiness
100%.
In the first half. But the talent took over, Vince.
Yes.
And that was the big thing where they were able to kind of put that drive away. And even that drive was sloppy. You got into 3rd down early and you had to get a first down. You got into a 3rd and 17 because your quarterback gets sacked, and then you have a pass breakup, and then you got to convert on 4th down. Then you get into a 3rd and 10, 4th and 10, you're going to punt. And this is what I want to talk about it now. That was such great in-game play calling because, and I know you guys talked about it, so I won't talk about it a whole lot.
No, you're good.
Freeman's awareness of they called timeout on 4th and 10. So if we send our offense back out there, they can't call timeout again because of the new rule change that you can't call back-to-back timeouts like you used to. That was such a great move by Freeman. And to send the offense back out there, but they didn't rush. They didn't get up, let's get up there really quickly. Like, get up there with some tempo, make sure you see what's going on. And then Florida State's looking around, they're not sure what's going on. And then Riley goes and makes, and it's a great read. It was the best read he made all game. Because that was not his initial read. He was poised. He came backside. He hits Jordan Faison, moves the chains. Great play call. But Freeman, they sending the field goal team out was the right move. It was 4th and 10. You're at your own 34. It's only you need to get that score right before the end of the half. You needed it, right? But when they called timeout, and that was such one of his best in-game sequences I've seen from Marcus Freeman when it comes to managing a game and managing the situations. It was one of the best sequence of events that we've seen from him. And then also you get that first down, you immediately line up and you go to your go-to guy and you throw a touchdown pass and it's ball game. That was big.
Oh, it's massive. It was absolutely massive. Remind me to tell you something about that a little bit later, Brian.
We'll do.
All right. So let's move on to the second key to victory going into the game. And it was win up the middle, get the run game going. And I think we can all agree that the run game was in good hands on Saturday. Had over 200 yards rushing. And at one point, now, obviously, the big run by Jadarian Price and the big run by Riley Leonard,
which was a pass play.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Right. I mean, so they didn't rush for 201 yards. They ran for about 160-ish in the game. Right. But
fair enough. Yeah.
I give it a check, Vince. I mean, they did what they needed to do. They didn't dominate up the middle. They didn't. But they didn't get dominated. And that was my fear, is that Jackson and Farmer would just kind of wake up and just dominate. And they didn't. And it was a very inefficient game. I'll have my run game data coming out tomorrow, but it was a very inefficient game. They were sub 50% in run game efficiency, but they did what they needed to do. I mean, that's the reality of it, Vince, is they did what they needed to do. And like you said, ended the game with 201 rushing yards and 6.3 yards per carry. Notre Dame has had so many. How was the run performance? It was all right. They ran for a 270. I was like, I know, but it just didn't feel like they were just like the 2017 team. You're just like, oh my gosh, they're just destroying people. We haven't seen that a whole lot from this team, Vince, but it's just like, and then you look down and you're like, okay, 362, 270, 229, 265, 201, and just like they just keep racking up yards.
I know.
You know what I mean? And it's
eventually you gotta be like, well, okay.
Right.
I mean,
like this is who they are, and it's pretty good. It
right.
doesn't maybe look as sexy as that team, but like,
sure.
As good as that 2017 offensive line was, Vince, they averaged 6.25 yards per carry. This team's at 5.98. Not that far off.
Right.
And you just have to kind of say, like, dude, they just do what they need to do. This is not going to be a super efficient Audric Estime-ish type of run game. It's going to be a flashy, big play, run hard, but big play type of offense. That's just what it is. Yep. And when they're efficient, they're untouchable. When they're not efficient, they're still going to get their yards. And by the way, Notre Dame has 5 games of 200 rushing yards through 9 games. 5 of those games, they've had 200 rushing yards. Last year, they only had 4 the whole season. And in 2022, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they have in 13 games. So they're only 2 off of that year with Coach Heastan. But if you go back and kind of look over the years, they had 3 in 2021. They had, 5, 6, 7 in 2020 and 12 games. So like they're on pace to have 200 plus yards in some years where we thought that team was, pretty good running the football. But there's also the game against A&M where they ran for 198. So you just kind of look at it and you're like, this team just every week just puts in that work, and does what they need to do on the ground.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there talking about how a 201 yard performance with 6.3 yards per carry is like, it's all right. I give them a check. It's all right. But they didn't get the push I hoped that they would get. Sure. But they did it. But they weren't getting beat because they weren't they were relatively assignment correct for the most part. They just weren't. Those big boys were. They couldn't move those big boys like they needed to consistently enough. But they did their job, so I give them a check, Vince.
Yeah, I'm with you on the check.
And that's standard though. I mean, isn't that kind of crazy though? We're sitting there talking about 201 yards and 6.3 per carry. We're just like, it was all right.
And I think for me, when I was thinking about the run game and all of that, they had 101 yards in the second quarter alone. You know what I mean? It was like,
thanks to a 65-yard.
Oh, I get it.
And most of that came in 3 plays. You had the 17-yard run. Like Jadarian by himself had 85 yards on 3 carries and 1 drive.
Because he's the only one that touched the ball those 3 plays.
And they only had 16 rushing yards the rest of the quarter. But those still count. right? You know what I
Exactly.
mean, Vince? Like those big
Big
plays
plays
still count.
count,
Right.
and that's the thing about this team is no matter who's in the backfield, there could be a big play lurking around every corner. That's the thing. And that's the exciting part of this offense is that these guys are big play able. Any guy that touches the football, except for maybe Devin Ford, is a big play possible guy. And so whether they're going to get the ball thrown to them,
Kedron,
handed, all of them. And that's the thing. So I think it still makes this team extremely dangerous in the run game because at any point, a guy can rip one off.
That's my one concern, however, in the postseason is can they live off that for 4 games in the postseason? They're going to have to start being more efficient at some point in time running the football. And I think as this offensive line gels a little bit more, the new look, because this is only their second game together, this version of the offensive line, it's only their second game together.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
you
part
hope
of it.
You hope that'll kind of get better and better and better.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely part of it. Let's move on to key number 3. Force them to make decisions, run tempo, movement, post-snap switches, mix up the backfield action, etc. So forcing the Florida State defense to adjust to what you're doing, you're meaning the Notre Dame offense. So make them adjust to you. What do you think?
I give them a check. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was good. I mean, there was a lot of movement. They worked with a decent pace. Mixed up some backfield action, like they ran a quick pitch during the game, which didn't work, but it kind of said, hey, we're going to do some different things. There was I think I saw like one orbit motion in there, a lot of movement with the backs, emptying the backs out, a lot of things like that. The screens were well designed. They had the one play, the throw to Greathouse, I believe it was on the third down call where Riley kind of, I think he rolled right and then threw back to Greathouse.
Yep.
On a screen. That's a really well-designed play because I think they threw that away from where Jeremiah Love was. I'm going to have to now go look at the play.
Isn't that the one where they faked it to Greathouse first and then threw it to him? Was that the one?
That might have been the orbit motion that I was talking about. I'm going to try to find that play here, Vince. But I mean, that was like one of those things where it's like, okay, good design. You got them a little bit on their heels. And so, I mean, there was good stuff there, Vince, with that. It was good. Like it wasn't, oh man, plus like he was in his bag today. But at the same time, I think it became kind of early on. I felt like Coach Denbrock knew he didn't necessarily need that. Like to really get too deep into the weeds type of thing. You know what I mean? But no, I mean, overall it was a good performance. I'm going to try to find that play. But
yeah, no, I was happy with it. I thought that at the beginning of the game, I wasn't really sure kind of how they were going about some things offensively. And I was like, okay, I guess, you kind of know what you want to attempt to do here. And then they finally just got into the rhythm of what I think they do well. Now, I think there was also a concerted effort to get Jaden Greathouse the football in this game. I think there was a concerted effort to get Mitchell Evans the football in this game. I think that appeared to be pretty clear to me. And they did some different things to get them the football. When was the last time we saw, Mitchell Evans on a fade into the end zone? You know what I mean? Like, great play call. I love the mismatch in Notre Dame's favor. And they obviously took advantage of it. And it was a great touch throw by Riley, just right over the shoulder there. But you could have put a multitude of guys in that spot to make that play. And it was like, nope, this is going to be Mitchell Evans' ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there was like the other. Yeah, you're spot on. There was the other play too, Vince, where they like it was actually it was third quarter. The play to Greathouse was third quarter, but like there was the play where the second quarter where on that final drive, the play that he hits Jaden Harrison, where they're in a look, but then Riley makes a motion, and then they simultaneously kind of squeeze down, right, and then quickly line up, snap the ball. And then guess what? Jaden Harrison kind of comes free for a big play. It may not seem like, oh, wow, look how super exotic that was. But, it ended up working. You know what I mean? So, that's not the play that I'm thinking. I'm going to have to try to find that play to Jaden Greathouse. But it was because it was a 3rd and 6, actually, and they converted a 3rd and 6. It wasn't the 20-yard gain. That was just on a little tunnel screen. But
was it the first half?
Yeah, so, I'm pretty sure it was. But there was just a lot of stuff like that, Vince, where you just watched them play and you're just like, you know what? Like they're doing a good job here. It's not lighting the world on fire. It's not, oh my gosh, this team is just, this is Mike Denbrock at his absolute pinnacle and all that. It wasn't
Right.
that. It just was, it was good. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
They did what they needed to do.
And I think with each passing game that you're seeing the comfort level between Riley Leonard and Mike Denbrock. And you mentioned the back and forth they had on the sideline. Look, the game was over at that point from a score standpoint, and he's still coaching them, and he's starting to understand how he can coach Riley Leonard and what works and what doesn't work. And I don't want to say the regular season was kind of a testing ground, but it kind of was. You know what I mean? And it took them about half the season to kind of figure each other out, and it was a two-way street. And I think they're there now. And, that's why Mike Denbrock is holding him to such a high standard on the sideline right now. We didn't see those kinds of interactions early on in the season because I think there were times where Mike Denbrock was asking Riley Leonard to do things he's just not great at. You know what I mean? Or it didn't fit with what they were trying to do or whatever the case may be. Now you're seeing Mike Denbrock call plays that he knows that Riley Leonard is comfortable with and that he can execute and he should be executing it. And when he doesn't, he's going to get on him. And I think that's awesome. I think that's fantastic. So they're in a good place right now offensively. And I think that's a good sign. That's a good sign. Final offensive key to victory: go big play hunting. Jadarian Price went big play hunting.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that. I mean, because like big play, what I refer to as that, Vince, it was more so like I want you to look for the big plays, like find ways to do the big plays, and I think that was a success. I do. I think that was a successful type of look. It was. I'm gonna try to find it, but there was another third down conversion where they motioned Jaden Greathouse ran like a zip motion and then goes back out and runs like a clear and then an under route on 3rd and 1, gets first down, like just stuff like that. It was just, it's nothing rocket science, but it just was, that's good play design. That's good play design. So it was just things like that. But
well, the big play hunting, I thought Jaden Harrison got involved in some big plays. Jordan Faison got involved in some big plays. They were obviously getting the ball to Jaden Greathouse for big plays. Like, I do think they kind of chunked some plays in this one.
I found that play, Vince, and it was an attempt to rip off a big play. They ended up getting 10 on it, but basically they lined up in a 3-by-1 with the tight end in a wing position in a flex alignment. Jaden Greathouse outside. He goes in. That's the orbit motion play. Riley Leonard fakes the reverse to Greathouse, rolls right like they're going to run a sling to Jeremiah Love, throws a screen backside, and Jaden catches it, makes some guys miss, ends up getting 10 yards, over 10 yards in the play, 10 yards in the play.
Was that the second and 7?
You're trying to get a first down on that. And so that was a big play opportunity. You had some other missed ones. You ran an inside post to Jaden Greathouse. That was meant to be a touchdown pass. You had 2 deep balls to Jaden Harrison. You had a deep ball to Bo Collins. It was actually a great play. Did you see that play? The back shoulder he threw to Bo Collins. The DB, number 8, the tall kid, Thomas, reaches back and like he's beat. And he just like he had some long arms and he gets his hand on the football. It's like that's just a heck of a play. Sometimes you tip your cap to the other kid. That's a heck of a play.
Yep.
And Bo didn't do anything wrong. I didn't evaluate it as doing anything wrong. I mean, Riley maybe could have put the ball 2 inches higher, I guess. But sometimes you just got to look, hey, man, that's a heck of a play. Had great coverage, and he broke it up. But there were certainly some opportunities that they were looking for, getting Jeremiah Love out in space in the pass game, clearly an attempt to get him. The one of the plays they had, I think it was second or third quarter, where he hit Jeremiah Love on a slant route. They were clearly, they had been doing a lot of motioning Jeremiah and then working him on out cuts. They were clearly trying to get the DB to bite on that and then free Jeremiah up over the middle. DB played it well. Guy covered Jeremiah well. Riley still put it right on the money, and Jeremiah made a tough catch for a 15-yard gain. That was an attempt to rip off a big play. They defended it well, and it still went for 15. So I give him a check. I give him a check for this. I mean, and if I give him a check for big game hunting, and I give him a plus for big plays.
Okay.
Right? So, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because
that's different. Because a bit like the touchdown run by Riley Leonard was a big play, But it wasn't a called play.
No, it wasn't. It was
you know what I mean?
It was the 65-yard touchdown run. You're not doing like thinking, hey, every time you call a play, run play to Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price, they have a shot to rip it off, but that's
correct.
That's not necessarily
on paper. It's usually written up that it could break away. You know,
of course,
you know what I mean?
Of course. But you're running inside zone. It's not geared to like, okay, if we run inside zone here, we're going to go for 65. Like, but so it turned out to be that way.
Right.
So that's where I'm at.
Well, that's going to do for our offensive revisit of the game. So make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards@irishbreakdown.com for all of your breaking news and discussions and all the fun stuff that is Notre Dame football. You're not going to get a better bang for your buck than being over at Irish Breakdown and the boards over there, the premium member area. So boards@irishbreakdown.com, and you can join the fun. All right, Brian, let's jump into the defensive keys to victory. Let's revisit those and talk about this amazing defense that Notre Dame has overall and see if they've lived up to the billing of your defensive keys to victory. So first one up is dominate up front, and 8 sacks up front. Brian, was that a dominating performance?
Even with the first quarter where you let them go down the field, you were getting kind of pushed off a little bit off the line. There was a couple moments where I thought they gave a little bit up too much ground in the run game, but like Florida State was ripping off like 6-yard runs. They had like a couple 10 pluses, but even still, Vince, when you look at it, it's like, yeah, there was a little bit too much of that, but Florida State still rushed for 120 yards on 43 carries and, didn't get to 100 yards passing. Yeah. So,
right.
I mean, like their pass game has been awful all year, but the lowest they've had before that was 115 against Miami. They threw a TD pass, no picks in that game. Notre Dame held them to 88 passing yards. That's a pretty dominant performance. Last time they did that was last year. Something worse than that was last year in the ACC title game. They held Louisville to 55, or Louisville held them to 55 when it was with their backup quarterback. The difference is in this game. In that game, Louisville kept their starters in the whole game because it was a 16-6 game. They were at 44 yards when the Notre Dame pulled their starters, and they were not going to complete any more passes against the first-team defense. Vince, it just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And they did that without Howard Cross for 2/3 of the game, like for over half the game. And it was kind of like that injury woke that D-line up a little bit, and they just took the game
specifically Riley Mills.
Yeah, but here's Riley went off. But then Howard's replacement, Donovan Heinisch, comes in and he gets 2 sacks.
Yep.
So like it's just that next man. I mean, think about this, Vince. They did what they did against Florida State without their starting Viper, their best pass rusher, and their preseason All-American defensive tackle. That's what they did most of that without those guys.
Yeah.
Because I think they only had like 1 sack at that point in time when Howard went down, and then they just kind of went off after that.
Yes, they did.
So
and I mean, they were in their face all day.
Yeah, so like, did they give up a little bit too much, room on the ground? Yeah, I mean, they did. I would have liked to see them hold them to fewer than 120 yards. I mean, I would have, but that's a nitpick. They were dominant. 8 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. Yeah, it's hard for me to get too picky about that.
Yeah, it's a plus for me. I mean, it was fun watching these guys just kind of pin their ears back and get after Florida State. I mean, after that first drive, which was frustrating. Look, I'm not going to lie. When I was sitting there watching that first drive, I was like, really? Just going to let them drive right down the field and just run it right down your throat? Like, wow, this is happening. But then they, like you said, they emptied the clip on that first drive and they only ended up with a field goal. And then it was all downhill from there. I mean, the defense just absolutely dominated at that point. So, absolutely. So it's a plus for me. Did you say it was a plus for you?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Like I said, I could nitpick. Okay, it wasn't perfect, but it was dominant.
Yeah. That's fair. No, that's fair. All right, let's see here. Defensive key to the game part 2 was confuse the quarterback. And Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this one because obviously the quarterbacks were not good in the passing game by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, Brock Glenn started out, what was it? He had one completion in his first.
It's like 11 or 12 or something like that, wasn't it?
11. He was 1 for 11 to start off the game. So
yeah, he wasn't good.
No, he wasn't good. And one of those was the pick to Clark. So
well, I mean, Florida State did throw a touchdown pass in the game to Notre Dame.
Sure.
But
to Notre Dame. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I thought they did a good job of confusing him. Honestly, it's like Notre Dame kind of let the game come to them a little bit. I think they were curious what Florida State was going to kind of do in the first drive. And once they kind of figured out what Florida State's game plan was, which was a lot of bootleg, a lot of moving the quarterback outside, they were not going to just let the quarterback sit in the pocket all game. And once Notre Dame got a read on that, they were pretty good. Like there was even the play, where and this kind of goes back to the last play. We didn't mention how well Junior Chalamaka played, but there was a play on there, Vince, where they rolled out and they were double teaming RJ Oben and holding him, and he just rips through the two guys, and he's like, get off me, and he gets outside, and the quarterback was about to turn the corner, and once he saw RJ Oben get through that double team, he couldn't turn the corner, and he just kind of threw the ball away, and it was like, they weren't comfortable with what they were seeing. No, Notre Dame was doing a lot of showing linebacker blitzes and then dropping them. Right. They didn't blitz their linebackers a whole lot this game.
No, they didn't.
And they haven't needed to in recent games. They haven't blitzed their linebackers a lot on first and second down in recent games because I think there's a lot more confidence that the defensive line can get to the quarterback by itself. Yeah, I thought that there was a lot there that the quarterbacks just weren't comfortable. And they're not good anyway. Their quarterbacks are not. The Croman-Holt kid is actually talented. He's just a true freshman playing on a really bad team. Brock Glenn is not good. He's not a good quarterback. The Croman-Holt kid, he's going to be all right if they can coach him up and keep him alive in the pocket. But, he's a nice quarterback, but Brock Glenn is just not a good player. And Notre Dame did exactly to a kid like that. I mean, went 5 of 18 for 51 yards and 2 picks.
Right.
Which is partly why Notre Dame's yardage total wasn't greater because they had multiple drives that they started on very short fields, and then they lost a series because of the pick six. That's partly why they only had 453 yards.
Yeah.
Because
the second team would have still gotten, yardage.
And the play by Luke Talich is a perfect example. I mean, it was their starting quarterback. So, it was Notre Dame's backup defense, but it was their starting quarterback. And Luke Talich rolls down. And guy runs an outcut, and he doesn't realize that Luke Talich is robbing all the way down, undercuts the route. Great read by Luke, makes a great catch, and then takes it to the house.
Yeah.
So, I'd give him a plus on that one.
That's still one of my favorite stats of the day is that he had 79 yards receiving for them, and for Florida State, and they only had 88 total the rest of the game. Like that's still one of my favorite stats. It was only 9 yards shy of their entire total. So that was awesome.
Wasn't Luke Talich the leading pass catcher in the game for either team?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, without even looking at it, I don't think anybody got 79.
I think Greathouse was at 66 for Notre Dame. He was their leader. Now, again, he didn't do a whole lot in the fourth quarter because of the lead, but Luke Talich had the most receiving yards in the game.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. Isn't that funny? But what a great play by him. He baited him so bad. I mean, that was so freaking fantastic. All right. Next defensive key to victory was early down success.
They dominated that one. Yeah, they absolutely dominated that one.
I mean, they dominated all downs, to be honest with you, but yes, early downs as well.
Yeah,
no doubt. I mean, they were 3 of 17 on third down. They were 1 of 2 on fourth down. I mean, yes.
Yeah, Vince, I'm publishing that article. Just so you guys know real quick, Nolan James just announced his commitment to Notre Dame. That was the article that I was working on getting written before we started the show tonight. So I just wanted to let you guys know that Nolan has committed to Notre Dame. We will break that down after we're done with this segment, but just wanted to give you guys a heads up that did officially happen. So
that actually went down.
Yeah, it was supposed to go at 8:30. He did it a couple minutes early. So
he's messing with us.
Yeah. But anyway, I kind of get your thoughts on the early down success. I thought after the first drive, I thought they dominated first and second down.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the thing. I mean, they were behind the sticks so much. That's one of the reasons they were 3 of 17 on third down, and why they had to go for it a couple of times on fourth down is because Notre Dame was so successful on first and second down. I mean, they had third and long. I would love to see the breakdown, and I know you'll have that at some point. But like the breakdown of down and distance on third downs for Florida State, they had third and long an awful lot. I mean, you're not 3 of 17 if you've got a bunch of 3rd and 3s or 3rd and 2s, to try to convert. We're talking 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 plus, an awful lot. And that's because of the success that Notre Dame had on first and second down. I mean, they were just harassing Florida State on a regular basis. Yeah. And it was just, they didn't know what to do is basically what it comes down to. They didn't have a plan. After that first series,
they had a plan. There was nothing they could do. They were dominated athletically. They were dominated in the trenches. I mean, it has to be Vince, I was in a game like that once. And it's just like, it's so, you're just like, I don't really know what to do. We're so dominated that there's nothing in my bag of tricks that says, hey, we're dominated in the trenches, but at least we're getting our butts kicked outside. You know what I mean? So it's there's nothing in the bag of tricks. That's what everybody saw, Norvell's got to he's got to hire a new OC. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. He probably should at this point in time because he needs to focus more on being the head coach with everything going on. But there's not an OC in the planet that's going to be able to make up for the fact that they're just so overwhelmed by what Notre Dame could do to them in the trenches and on the perimeter. Like this is what people don't understand. Like Notre Dame is a really athletic football team on defense, like really athletic. There's a couple times that I think Florida State's running backs thought they were about to get the corner and just nope.
And there's not going to be many running backs in the country that are going to be able to get a corner on Notre Dame's defense on a regular basis.
No, there really aren't. So after the first drive, Vince, let's just go through Florida State's first down gains. 2 yards, 1 yard. Let's see here. Second quarter. 6 yards, first down, 5 yards, 0 yards, sack on second down, 5 yards, 2 yards on second down, third down punt. Next drive, got a 0 yards, incomplete pass, ended up going, 3rd and 10, you get sacked. So you go in the second half, first down, you get 7 yards, then a first down, 3 yards. Sack.
That was on a scramble, by the way. That 7 yards was on a QB scramble.
Yep. Sack on second down, drive over, and then intercepted on third down. 8 yard gain on a scramble. Then you get second and down, get a false start. You get +1 on 2nd and 7, so you're now at 3rd and 6, just like that. Right? And they ended up getting the first down on that when there's a blown coverage by the defense. Yeah. 1st and 10, you get 4 yards, and then 0 yards on 1st and second down. Convert a third down, again, up the middle, another blown assignment by Notre Dame on that particular drive. That was the other drive that I was really annoyed. And then -2 on first down, -8 on second down, and then the next thing you know, they're going for it on fourth down, and they get sacked. That was that drive in the second half where they drove into territory, and then Notre Dame just,
Well, and that was 2 of their 3 third down conversions were on that drive right there,
on that
by the way.
Yeah.
So just wanted to highlight
it was just like next drive, -2 on first down. You get into the fourth quarter.
I stopped keeping track at that point, to be perfectly honest with you.
+2, so you're 3rd and 11. Yeah. It was one of those things, Vince, where they got Notre Dame was offsides on a play, so then they were 1st and 5. They only got 3, and they got 0, so they're in 3rd and 2, despite not starting to play off on 1st and 5. They just dominated on first down. I mean, they really did. They really did.
Yep. All right, the final key to victory defensively is very simple. Get the ball, create turnovers. I mean, pretty simple stuff. And I believe they only ended up with 1 official turnover. No, 2 interceptions, right? You had the Clark interception, the Luke Talich interception. So 2 picks, but they did force the ball on the ground once. They didn't recover it, but it was 4th down, so it didn't really matter. They were getting the ball there anyway.
But that's a turnover. I mean, it's literally called turnover on downs.
Well, that's a good point. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
So what do you write in your note that happens, Vince? I write TOD. That's what I write. Turnover on downs,
I think I wrote
So
sack fumble is what I wrote.
yeah. No, I just mean as far as like
sack,
end of
sneak,
play
fumble.
result.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, gotcha.
So, yeah, 2 turnovers, and there was a couple
one
other
for a
plays.
touchdown. So
yeah. Oh, they're. I mean, a lot of the passes that weren't complete were throw. I mean, they threw the ball away a lot. I mean, that's one thing I'd like to go back and count is how many throwaways Florida State had.
Yeah,
in that game.
good call.
It's like they were just like, dude, screw it. We're just, we're throwing it away. So,
right. Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
That was dominant performance.
Defense had a great game.
We this defense, I believe I had said before the game, it had forced 2 turnovers in all but 2 games this year, and now that's another one. You chalk up another one in that situation. So you've now in your 9 games, you forced at least 2 turnovers in 7 of the 9. The ones you didn't were Stanford and Northern Illinois, and you've got 20 turnovers. Last year's defense is good. Was really good at turnovers too, Vince. They had 24 in 13 games. This team has 20 and 9. You know what I mean? So Golden's first year. Remember, they didn't force a turnover till the 4th game of the year. Finished with 15.
Yeah.
Freeman's first year, they were at 25. Before that, 17 in 2020, 28 in 2019, 21. So, like, they're on a really good pace for turnovers. Really good pace for turnovers right now. So, actually, let me figure that out. What would their pace be for a 13-game season? So, let me see here real quick. Yeah, they're on pace for 29 forced turnovers.
I like it.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, no, the teams are trying to press this defense, and they're trying to do some different things to them, and it's just not working. It's not going to be effective, and Notre Dame's going to continue to take the ball away, and they're going to continue to give their offense short fields, and it's going to be fun to continue to watch this defense. I mean, it just felt like the defensive front had a coming out party in this game, and I'm excited to see kind of how that continues to develop. Obviously, they're not going to have 8 sacks against Army. It's just not an offense that they're set up to do that kind of a thing. But
if they do, that means if they end up with like a bunch of sacks into Army, it means that they are destroying Army. Army. And they have to throw the football.
Look, I'm okay with some tackles for loss and some things like that because that means you're penetrating and you're making them do some different things they don't want to do, which is definitely a possibility. But I mean, this was just a great game for Notre Dame. And the fact that we didn't even really see a whole lot of the secondary during the game pretty much speaks volumes to what they were able to do on the back end. Because as you mentioned, quarterbacks were throwing the ball away an awful lot. And some of that was they were running for their lives, and some of it was there was nowhere to go with the football.
Yeah, there wasn't. I mean, it was a dominant. Again, like they played better than the offense did, Vince. But
it was
pretty. It wasn't like a vintage. Wow, they were so good. They just overwhelmed them. They were just so much better than Florida State.
You could see the panic on Florida State's face.
Yeah. We talked before the game. The defense for Florida State's much better than their offense. Like more talented, more productive. Like their offense has been a mess all year. Notre Dame they kind of just ate them up.
Yeah.
The defenses side were like, this is what can make the game a little bit competitive. They have some future NFL guys on the D line. They have a couple corners that are pretty good. I don't know. I don't think Cypress played, but the Thomas kid's a really good football player, number 8. Shaheem Brown was on my preseason all-opponent team. He was an all-ACC kid last year. There's some talent over there. And how are you going to perform against it? This side of the ball, they're terrible. There's just no other way around it. Their O-line sucks. Their receivers suck. Their starting quarterback is awful. Their running backs are talented, and their backup quarterback's talented, and that's about it. And their running backs made some plays in the game too. But some of that was just more on Notre Dame. But that's kind of how I felt about it, Vince. But just a dominant performance.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that's going to do it for our defensive keys to victory revisited. Thanks for hanging out with us. And don't forget to hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And of course, join the boards, boards.irishbreakdown.com for all your Notre Dame recruiting info. Hint, hint. and a lot of other wonderful things over there. And there's going to be some breakdowns, some video breakdowns, and all of that, as there are every week when Brian puts that up there in the next day or two. And so you definitely want to get on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. Mm-hmm. Well, Brian, it is a Monday night, and sometimes we'll talk about the college football playoffs coming up. Sometimes we'll, dive more into the film. Tonight, we've got a recruit to talk about and a commitment that, kind of came not out of nowhere, but at the same time, it was a situation where we're getting ready to do this show, and it's like, hey, we get something extra to talk about tonight. And Notre Dame received a commitment from 2025 running back Nolan James. He was a Boston College commit, so he has flipped over to Notre Dame. He was on campus this weekend for Florida State. Now, obviously, that went pretty darn well for Notre Dame, and it was enough for Nolan James to pull the trigger, and he is now a member of the 2025 class, Brian. So let's break this thing down. Let's, kind of talk about how this all went down. We'll get the backstory, and then we'll talk about, his fit in the class, and then what's next. And that's kind of how we always do the story.
I'm actually tweeting this out right now, so telling people to come join us. So
there you go.
Telling people we're breaking it down right now. So look, a little backstory here, Vince. Obviously, Notre Dame had 2 running backs committed in the class. They had 2 kids that they committed, got very early, and and Justin Thurman and Daniel Anderson had been committed for a while. The process with Daniel Anderson, I'll just quickly go over it. We talked about it before. Notre Dame had taken a very early commitment from him. They had told him over the summer that they were going to kind of reevaluate him and needed to see what he did his senior year, and eventually told him he didn't have a spot in the class. I've made my feelings known on that. I love that kid. He handled it with such grace and class, but I don't like it. I don't like you offered the kid. You're the one that got his commitment early,
and you said it was okay for him to commit.
And I said at the time it was too early. It was way too early to take that kid. You could have flipped him later in the process. It's not his fault that you didn't make a great evaluation. That's not on the kid, but that's the situation. But they still wanted a second back in the class. There was a couple guys they kind of targeted early, few guys they targeted early, trying to figure out who was the right fit. And they kind of settled in on pretty quickly Nolan James. And this is a kid, Vince, that I liked a lot. I had a friend of mine when Daniel Anderson decommitted said, hey, you got to watch this Nolan James kid. I hadn't really seen him a whole lot, to be honest with you, Vince. Watched this film, and I was like, I absolutely love this kid. Just fell in love with him, watched some film of him, and said, boy, this is the kind of running back I love. I'm a Denver Bronco fan, right? From back in the 90s. I'm that one-cut slasher that, Terrell Davis. And, and this kid fits that very well. He's got we'll talk about him as a player, but, they kind of keyed in on him. And I also think that they're talking to some sources. He's got kind of the mentality that Dylan McCullough loves. Looks at the depth chart and says, hey, I just want to know that I'm going to get a chance to compete. That's all I care about. And they're like, of course you are. And then and he said, as long as you're recruiting me because you think I can play for you, not just to fill a roster spot, I'm interested. This is essentially kind of how the conversation went. And so, because he's a big time into academics, so he committed to BC over some other schools because he's a big time high academic kid.
I love that.
And absolutely. But so Notre Dame kind of said, okay, let's zero in on him, and got him on campus this weekend. And that was what the conversation was like. He had I was told he asked a lot of tough questions, really trying to get because he knows this is a quick process for him. So he has to ask all the questions that take 6 months to ask during a courtship from both sides. This kid and Notre Dame had to kind of get out of each other in 2 weeks. And so he was you got into some of those conversations. He asked some tough questions. They had great conversations with him. I was told by some people that were around him a lot and around his family a lot, that he connected really quickly with the Notre Dame commits in the class. The parents you could just kind of salt of the earth type of people, but smart, asking the right questions, that kind of thing. And it just was a natural fit. And as long as Notre Dame could convince him, hey, we see you as a guy that we're coming here to compete and have a role, not just a guy that says, okay, we need 5 scholarship backs, and over the next couple of years, we want to make sure we've got our 5, and so you're going to help us get our 5. We'll have 6 next year, but it wasn't that. It was, dude, we think you can play.
Yeah.
And the way that Notre Dame uses their running backs with like Aeneas Williams, like, hey, why couldn't you have the Aeneas Williams role in a couple of years when Aeneas is maybe a starter, or he's the Jadarian Price to the Kedron Young being the Jeremiah Love, or Kedron's Jadarian Price to Aeneas's Jeremiah Love kind of thing. And so once that was sold, it was over. And once he was able to, they were able to convince him, like, hey, man, we dig you. We think you can play. I'm not wasting my time this late in the process on just a roster filler. Then he was on board, and that's how they were able to make it happen.
Love that. So how does he fit in with this class? And I mean, you mentioned the fact that he's the second back and all of that. And
he's the second back, but he's graded as my number 1 back in the class. Right now. I grade him higher than Justin.
The second back in the class, but not the second ranked back in the class. Yep. Okay. Gotcha.
He's the second back to commit, but he grades out higher. Justin Thurman, sort of that big play potential guy, the slasher. This kid is an every down back, in my opinion. I mean, this is a kid, Vince, that's got over 3,000 career rushing yards and over 1,000 career receiving yards, because he actually played a little receiver. He played running back and receiver as a sophomore and had over 500 receiving yards as a sophomore. I think he fits the offense great, Vince. And when you look at how he fits into the class, he meets your numbers need. You wanted 2 backs.
Right.
He meets that need. You wanted at least 1 back that can kind of, and that's part of the issue that they had with Daniel Anderson is, like, the Notre Dame staff loved that kid, loved Daniel Anderson as a young man. They did. And I can assure you this, it was not easy telling that kid he couldn't come because he did everything right and they loved him as a kid, but as a football player, he just didn't progress. And the injuries just kind of really sapped the kind of player they thought he could be. I mean, he was a kid that ran a 4.5 flat at the combine before his junior year, but he had multiple lower body injuries and he just never got that juice back.
Gotcha.
And so they didn't have an every down type of back in the class. Justin Thurman's not an every down type of back right now. And so they wanted one, and that's part of the reason they like Nolan James, because he's a workload guy. He doesn't look like it. He doesn't look real big, but he's about 5'11", 195, 200. He's got a really unique frame, which I'll talk about when we break his game down, Vince, but he's got that workhorse type of body. He's gonna be somewhat built similar to what Jadarian Price is. Okay. He's more muscular than he is thick. You know what I mean? But he's strong. He's built, got a lot of armor on him. Yep. He's that kind of back that fits that every down back. But he also is an impact pass catcher, Vince, and that's an important piece of this conversation. And something that Notre Dame is looking for is they want that type of player. We've talked about this. They don't just want a guy that is a runner. I mean, if he is, that's great. But like this year, for example, he's got 22 catches. So on the season, he's got 1,399 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns in 9 games. And he's had some big games against some good teams. He had 174 yards on 35 carries against Good Counsel out of Maryland, where Cam Hart, Sam Mustipher, guys like that played at. So big-time program. He had 209 yards on 21 carries against Paramus Catholic. They played Del Barton, lost 52-51. Their only loss of the year so far. He had 29 carries for 157 yards. He had 21 carries for 249 yards against Seton Hall Prep. So this is a kid that's got some workhorse in him. You know what I mean, Vince? And he's not just he's not a scat back. He can be an every down back, even though he's not a real like big guy, just like kind of like Jadarian. You know what I mean? And so, and last year he had 26 carries in the playoff, 26 carries for 218 yards against St. Thomas Aquinas, 23 for 114 against Pope John, 28 for 228 against Paramus Catholic, 26 for 137 against Seton Hall Prep, 18 for 111 against Bishop McDevitt and PA. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's a lot of workhorse in this kid, Vince, but he's not just a runner. And that's my whole point that I'm making to you. Like, this is a kid that has rushed for over the last 2 years, and he still has games left. The season's not over yet. They've got a playoff game coming this weekend. He's got 2,800 rushing yards and 22 touchdowns the last 2 years, and he had 625 yards as a sophomore. So he's got over 3,600 yards. But he also has 1,084 receiving yards on 95 catches. As a sophomore, he had over 600 rushing yards, over 500 receiving yards. The last 2 years, as he's been more of a primary back, he still has caught 45 passes for 400 and about, if I'm doing the math correctly, Vince, it's about 458 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he's got experience in pass pro as well. So he is truly that all-around type of back that Notre Dame likes. And the reason they like that is because, like, Aeneas Williams is sort of their niche runner now, but that's not all he can do. That's just his role for now. You know what I mean? Jadarian Price is sort of that off-the-bench explosive. You can do a lot with 7 carries. You know, you can get to almost 100 on 5, 6, 7 carries.
Right.
But that's not all he can do. That's just his role right now. And that's how Nolan is. He's a kid who could have more sort of maybe a third down role. He could be Devin Ford. He could be Aeneas Williams early in his career, but he also has the ability to be a every down back also. And that's what Coach McCullough likes. He likes guys that have niche ability, but he wants a niche ability within overall strong all-around game.
Yeah.
And Nolan fits that. And as far as what Coach McCullough looks for. I'll just say this. There were other more highly ranked backs on the board that had some interest, but this is the kid Dylan McCullough wanted.
Well, that's all I need to hear. I mean, I'm being serious.
A lot of people should need to hear, yes.
If Mike Mickens tells me that there's other recruits out there that are rated higher, but this is the guy that he wants, yep, okay, I'm going with the guy that Mike Mickens wants. If Dylan McCullough tells me that this is the guy that he wants, then I'm on board. Like that's really all I needed to hear from those two guys in particular. And that sells me as much as what you just said sold me. Yep. That sells me.
I grade him as a 4-star recruit, Vince, myself, as also. So, and like I said, I actually liked this kid before I knew Notre Dame was on him. And I've got a couple texts. I sent a couple. I'll put it like this. I very rarely reach out to anyone at Notre Dame about recruits. Maybe once a year. You know me. I was like, that's just not my job. It's not my role.
Because you haven't done it for my kid.
I actually said, hey, are you guys recruiting this kid?
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching this kid's film. Are you? And the answer was, they were.
Yeah.
You know what
I mean? Right.
Right. Like that's how much I like this kid on film.
Yeah.
Before I even knew they were going after him. This kid can play.
Awesome.
This kid can play.
Fantastic.
And he's the kind of kid, he won't be like that. He's not Jeremiah Love.
Right.
Where it's like, oh my gosh, elite. I mean, he's just that kid. You're like, dude, he had 22 carries for 118 yards and 4 catches for 37 yards. And, you know, and you're just like, wow, what a day.
Yeah.
What a day, you know, but it won't be like, oh my gosh, did you see the move he made? The backwards reverse jump over a guy like Saquon Barkley.
Well, that's a pretty
you know what I mean?
Unique.
Like he won't do the things like Jeremiah. I mean, he's not that type of back. You just look down at him. He's more Kyron than he is Jeremiah.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Well, those are two completely different kinds of backs.
Exactly. He's more of that type of back where it won't always be sexy, but you just look down, you're like, oh, he got 100 yards today.
Right.
Where like when Jeremiah can have a game, you're like, oh, he was great. And then you're like, oh, he only rushed for 91 yards. It felt like more.
Yeah.
And then Kyron would run for 120. You're like, he ran for 120 yards because it just wasn't flashy or sexy all the time, but it just was productive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Nolan James is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get that for sure. So one thing we'd like to do whenever there's a commitment to Notre Dame, we like to talk about what's next. And so, Brian, what's next? Because this was the big recruiting weekend, obviously, on campus, and what's next?
I wanted to break his game down a little bit specifically first. We won't do a film breakdown, but I just wanted to kind of get a little bit into this particulars too, Vince, of what I like about him.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
And then I'll just transition into the what's next, and we'll just wrap up. Okay.
Perfect.
But like, because I know it's confusing because I was kind of talking about his skill set a little bit, so I get it. It's on me.
Good.
Couple things about him. Number one, like the frame. I talked about that earlier, but here's a unique thing about him, Vince. You got to look at the pictures of this kid. He's got a really long torso.
Okay.
And so his legs are shorter than what a normal 5'11" kid would look like. I'll send you a couple pictures of him, and you can see him, and you can see it when you watch film of him too. He's got shorter legs. The thing about that is that makes him harder to tackle because he's strong upper body, and he's built low. He's not short, but he's built low. So if you're going to go down on his legs, it's a little lower than what normally. Like he doesn't look abnormal, right? Like he doesn't look like an Oompa Loompa, but he's just built differently, which makes him a little bit harder to tackle. And you can see that power on film, and it also helps him with his back. He's a very balanced kid. You know, we're like Jeremiah Love's like all legs, right? He's got those really high hips. He's just, you know what I mean? Like he's just. Josh Adams was definitely that way. This kid's kind of the opposite of that.
Okay, gotcha.
And real strong kid, just not like, Audric looking strong, but more like Jadarian and Jeremiah, just real wiry, real strong, built well, athletic kid, great contact balance, Vince, great agility, can make those, you want running backs to be able to make that quick cut and then immediately accelerate. You want backs that can kind of get hit, bounce off of it, hit the ground, and boom, just keep on going. That requires balance. He's got that great. That's what contact balance is. You know what I mean? Can you get hit and stay balanced, not lose, where you need 3 steps to kind of gather yourself? Can you make a cut and immediately accelerate out of it? He does that.
Right.
He's not a burner, but he's fast enough where if you give him a hole, he's going to go for a big gain. He's in between Audric and Jadarian. He doesn't have Audric's speed. He's faster than that, but he's not Jadarian and Jeremiah either. He's kind of in between those two, which backs like that, you give them a crease, they're going to rip off long run. I mean, Audric Estime ran 4.7, and he had an 80-yard touchdown run against NC State. He had a 70-yard touchdown run called back. Like he had no problem ripping off long runs. Same thing with Kyron Williams, who ran like a 4.7. He had no problem ripping off, 40, 50-yard touchdown runs, and against Carolina, a 90-plus yard touchdown run, right? 4.55, 4.6 is still pretty fast, especially when you get in space. So he's got some of that big play, but he's not he's not Jadarian and Jeremiah, right? He's not. That's why I say he's more Kyron, which also makes him a better complement to kind of what they have a little bit, Vince. But I like that about him. Strong kid, catches the ball well, good second level anticipation. I mean, you can just see it as soon as what that basically is he's on his track. He can see that linebacker start to go, and he knows I got the cut back. And he'll stay on his track and then boom, hit it. Oh, he's really good in that. Real high football IQ guy, Vince. You can see it. He's smart. He's a smart football player, but he's tough and he's athletic. The only thing that keeps him from being a higher ranked kid, in my opinion, he's not quite as big as I'd ideally like, and he's not that burner type of guy. That's really what keeps him from being a top 100 to 120 guy for me, is that, but he's a really good football player. And so that's why he grades out as like a top 150-ish to 175-ish type of player for me. Okay. It's like Jadarian was a top 100 guy coming out of high school. Keidron was a top 100 guy because Keidron was a monster, right?
Yes, right. Physically, yeah.
Yes, and Keidron's probably a touch faster than this kid, at least out of high school. Like he was a top 100 guy. Jeremiah was a top 50 guy. Aeneas and Nolan James are more top 150 to 175 guys because they don't have that elite skill set, that elite size, but just really good football players. And that's how Nolan, that's what I like about him. So somebody asked, is he Audric fast? That's what I was saying earlier. He's faster than Audric. He's just not as fast as the guys they have now. He's kind of in between those two. Good route runner too, Vince. He's not like his pass catching is not just check downs and swings and stuff like that. He can actually run routes and tracks the ball down the field. So yeah, there's a lot to like about his game.
Love it.
It has the mental intangibles, and he's the skill set is there. I know you've watched this film, and you and I will talk about it later. But somebody asked, is he a better version of Jabron Payne? That's not a bad comp. That's not a bad comp at all. There's some similarities. I think Kyron's probably a faster version of Kyron. Maybe not quite as shifty as Kyron was, but similar. But that's not a bad comp at all. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one, Josh. I like that one. Yeah.
Are they going? I mean, without looking at the roster, are they going to have 8 scholarship backs next year if nobody transfers out or leaves?
No. So you'll have Jeremiah, Jadarian, Jabron, the two current freshmen, and then the two, because Devin Ford's out of eligibility.
Devin Ford will be done.
Yeah, he's out of eligibility. Out of eligibility.
Yep.
So
is that the? I mean, that seems like a lot. Is that the number that they want to be at?
Yes, because you can be over next year. They can be up to 105 next year on scholarship, so that helps them a little bit. But the thinking for Notre Dame is there's very little chance you're going to have Jeremiah and Jadarian and Jabron on the roster and by the time you get to 2026.
Well, yeah,
next year's your last year with 3 of those 7 guys,
right? And then you might see,
and you have to protect yourself in case somebody transfers.
Oh yeah, or an injury,
or hasn't it exactly?
Yeah,
exactly. Like, what if you'd have got Keidron Young last year and said, no, we're good with just one running back. And then I know Nina's committed first, but I'm making a point. And say, we don't need a second back because we've got Jeremiah, we've got Jadarian, We've got Devin Ford, we got Jabron Payne. So we just need one back. And then all of a sudden, you don't have that second back, and Jabron Payne gets hurt. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where it's at. It's kind of where it fits. So as far as what's next, Vince, I mean, obviously now Notre Dame has been recruiting 2026 running backs for a while. They have their list. They have guys they like. It's just keep doing what you're doing. This is just a circumstance where they kind of were done, but they had their eye on some other guys because they weren't sure what was going to happen with Daniel. Once they realized that Daniel just hadn't gotten – I mean, he wasn't starting for his high school team. Once he just hadn't gotten that juice back. He just had never truly recovered from all the injuries. Then it was like, okay, now we need to make a move. But Coach McCullough and Coach Boat or Chad have been – and the recruiting staff have been working on 26 running backs for a while. So this isn't like, gee, we've had to put all of our efforts into, like kind of like a receiver. Part of the reason they're not as far along with some 26 receivers is because they've had to put so much effort into finishing off the 25 class. Running backs not that way. They've been working on 26 running backs for a while. So now it's just turned to there. And now that can be more targeted. Maybe only one, maybe two, depending on, kind of what happens the next couple of years with Jeremiah and Jadarian. They may both be in the NFL in 2026. You may be looking at a little bit of a different situation. So at least one for next year, still maybe two. Just depends on how the roster shakes out. But as of right now, they're big game hunting in the 2026 class at running back.
Love that. Love it. Any other points you want to make about Nolan James?
It's just another good pickup. Like, look, one thing we've seen from this staff is there's certain coaches that should get the benefit of the doubt because of their track record. Mike Mickens is one, and so's Dylan McCullough. And I'm giving you guys my opinion. I think this is a 4-star kid. I think this is a top 150-ish caliber guy. I love this kid on film. And he produces, Vince, in a great league. I mean, he's playing against D1 kids every week at DePaul Catholic. He's a teammate. Oh, I forgot to mention this. He's a teammate of Elijah Burris. I forgot to mention that earlier. They have 6 or 7 kids going D1. They have a kid or two committed to Ohio State. Elijah's committed, obviously, to Notre Dame. This is a really good league. Rashawn Gary is from that league. If you guys remember, Rashawn Gary obviously played in Michigan. Like, this is they play St. Peter's Prep, where Justin Adamiola came from, Brandon Wimbush came from, Shane Simon came from. They play Good Counsel this year, which is where Sam Mustapher and Cam Hart came from. Like, this kid's playing big-time football, and he's producing the way that I just pointed out that he's producing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so productive back, talented back, fits the system. I don't care what the Stars say. I don't care. This kid can play football. The Stars also didn't think Kyron Williams. I didn't think Kyron Williams was going to be what he was. So I'm not even saying that they're bums for that. I didn't see it.
Right.
They didn't think Logan Diggs could play. Audric Estime wasn't ranked very high by anyone other than rivals. Jadarian Price wasn't graded out as a top 100 back. I mean, guys, these kids can play. And if Dylan McCullough says, hey, this kid can ball, I'm going to give the kid the benefit of the doubt. It just so happens in this case, I don't have to give the kid the benefit of the doubt because I already loved him. So in this instance, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But, in other times you're just like, okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because your track record speaks for itself. And not just at Notre Dame. I'm talking about at USC, at Indiana, in the NFL, you know what I mean, Vince? Like, guy's got a Super Bowl ring.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's produced Indiana's never been good at football. No, they really haven't. But I do know that there was a time when Dylan McCullough was popping out 1,000-yard rushing backs every year at Indiana. Guy can coach.
You only do so much. I mean,
yeah.
It does take a whole team.
Yep.
So, or 31 transfers, depending on how you want to look at it. All right. So that's going to do it for our discussion on Nolan James committing to the University of Notre Dame in the 25 class. He is a decommit from Boston College, and he is now in Notre Dame's class.
He never technically decommitted.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah, no, fair point.
He did tell the Boston College staff he never publicly decommitted.
Gotcha.
Here's something else I want to say about this. Nolan told us before the visit he was going to make a decision quickly because he didn't want to string out the coaching staffs, and he wanted whoever he didn't commit to, he didn't play for, to have time to do whatever they needed to do. That's the kind of kid he is.
I like that a lot.
Like, look, I'm not going to commit if I'm not ready, but I'd like to do something soon. Either I'm going to stay with BC or I'm going to flip to Notre Dame. I'm going to make a decision quickly because I want to make sure BC has time to go out and find my replacement. Or if I'm not going to flip to Notre Dame, they're going to need that time to go find a second running back in the
Right.
class.
They know it, and they can drop me and start working on other things. Yeah.
Yep. So that alone was like, you know what? I like this kid.
Yeah.
I like this kid. So it just speaks a little bit to him. And also, I have this shouldn't come as a surprise to people on the board. I mean, I kind of, we don't steal kids' moments. You guys know that. But I dropped a pretty big hint about Notre Dame doing a great job with this recruitment. You can find that on the board. It was an intel piece that I popped out this morning. Or actually, it was about 3:00 in the morning is when I finally got done doing that.
Technically, in the morning.
Yeah. Yep. So I said there's still some closing to do, but Notre Dame moved the needle big time with James. Right now, the Irish are the favorites to eventually land James when it's all said and done. Now, originally, I was actually told it would be sort of midweek, but he sped it up because he just knew. So why drag it out 2 more days? This is what I want to do.
Love it.
And so that's why it happened when it happened. But there's a big intel piece. I have updates on Antoine Parham. I have a very interesting update on Derek Meadows and Jalen Wiggins in my intel piece as well. Also have an update on Madden Faramo. And I'll be adding an Andrew Olesh update here either later tonight or tomorrow. So that's for premium members only.
That's the only way you're going to get it.
All of our recruiting news goes nowadays. So you're going to have to check that out over there.
Right down there, Boards.Irish Breakdown.
That's right.
Yep, boards.irishbreakdown.com is the only place you're going to get that kind of info. And if you were over there, you probably knew that this was coming at some point.
Yeah, you felt good about it.
Yeah, or at least, exactly. Feel good about it. So you're only going to find it boards.irishbreakdown.com. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. A little Irish Breakdown after dark. I love it.
It's always fun.
I know, right? For our upon further review, we've only got a few more of these left. Hopefully we've got, let's see, 3.
Well, hopefully we got 7 more left.
7. Yeah, I had to count it out.
7 more left. You shut your dirty mouth. We have a lot of these left, baby. At least 7.
We got 3 regular season ones left. That we know.
I love how Marcus Freeman said that. We're only guaranteed 1 more regular season game at home. Did you hear him say that?
I love it.
Like, good catch, coach. Good catch. Yes.
Yep. And he's right. You're only guaranteed 12 total, and you only got 1 more at home. So
hey, and I met a lot of you this weekend at the tailgate. I had so much fun. You all are such a blessing to me. All the people that asked about how my wife is doing and how we're doing. Man, y'all are just an amazing community. I'm very blessed by you. Just wanted to thank you guys publicly. I put something on. I was going to put something on the board. I just wanted to say it publicly. I wanted this community to be different, and it's beyond my wildest dreams what it has become, and the type of community we are, and the care we show for each other, and it just really meant a lot. And it was great seeing so many. Vince, we had a lot of new people that had never been to tailgates before. Our dude, Just Your Ordinary Joe was there, so obviously rocking the IB gear. But a lot of new faces. Got to see John and Katie Keevers were both there. So they were both there. No kids. So Katie, I didn't recognize Katie at first, but got a chance. A lot of different people were there, Vince. It was great. And I just want to thank all of you. The compassion and concern you guys showed for what we're going through just meant the world to me. It really did. And when you go through something and you find out you're not alone, other people have gone through it, that's encouraging. But when you find out, boy, there's a lot of people that care.
Yeah, that
are thinking about you and praying for you, it helps. And so I haven't put it out publicly. What we're going through is on the board, and those of you that know, what's going on. But I just wanted to say this in the show because so many of you listen. But I was just so incredibly grateful and thankful for the love and compassion you all have showed to me and my family over the last week. So thank you guys very much. It meant the world to me.
Can't top that. So we are going to sign off. Make sure you guys hang out with us all week long as we prepare for Notre Dame's final home game against Virginia. We'll have a show tomorrow afternoon, then, of course, tomorrow evening, and then tomorrow evening again because we've got the college football playoff ranking reaction show as well. So there'll be 3 shows tomorrow. So you got to make sure you hang out. It's going to be a little bit later because I believe the college football playoff ranking show is at 8:30. And so we will come on pretty much right after that, give or take about 9 o'clock.
Vince, you and I will talk. We may actually do the live show together tomorrow because the CFB Nation guys are not.
Oh,
so we may actually. Gotcha. I was going to talk to you about that. Fine. So we'll discuss that. Since it is later, I didn't want to wait till it was over. I figured we could just maybe go do a live breakdown of it and then just dive right into the
Perfect.
So that's
So,
my
hey,
plan, but I needed to get with you first. But
you might as well plan it. I'm cool with it. The earlier we start, the better it is for me and my beauty sleep.
You're an old guy, man. You know, I'm putting up intel pieces at 3:30, and Vince is like a couple hours away from getting up at that point in time. So it's like I'm putting intel pieces as Vince is waking up for his day. You know what I mean? So, and I'm going to bed. We have very different schedules. Very different schedules.
That's so right. So yeah, make sure you hang out with us tomorrow. Again, 3 shows tomorrow. Lots of fun football stuff to talk about. And guys, we this is the best time of the year. Okay, so we've got all kinds of great football games coming up that we're going to talk about as well. And of course, Notre Dame's final home game against Virginia. So make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. And we will talk to you multiple times tomorrow on the next edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Have a great night, everybody.